Welcome to Wisdom of the Ancients, the channel where timeless lessons from thousands of years ago meet the world of today. Today, we are going to talk about something the ancients called the Great Taboos, the ultimate prohibitions in the art of living well. And among those taboos, there is one that when I mention it will surprise many of you. Some of you may not even believe it. It is a warning passed down through generations of Eastern medicine. That intimacy between a man and a woman during a very specific window of the night can cause serious, lasting damage to your health and your longevity. Not superstition, not old folklore, but a sophisticated philosophical and medical system, built and tested across thousands of years of human observation. I know you are curious, and I promise we will get to the heart of that mystery. But first, let me lay the foundation. Because without understanding the groundwork, the full weight of what the ancients discovered simply will not land. More than 2,000 years ago, in the imperial court of the Han Dynasty, a text was written that would become the soul of Eastern medicine. It was called the Huangdi Neijing, the Yellow Emperor's classic of medicine. Legend holds that it records a dialogue between the Yellow Emperor Xuanyuan and his master physician Qi Bo. And within its pages is a passage that healers for generations have committed to memory. Follow the rhythm of Yin and Yang, harmonize with the ways of heaven and earth, eat and drink with moderation, live and rest with regularity. Do not exhaust yourself beyond your limits, and your body and spirit shall move as one, living out the full span of years that heaven has given you. That is the philosophy of Sheng, the art of nourishing life. As the ancients understood it, they had no modern hospitals, no antibiotics, no MRI machines. But they had something we are slowly losing, a profound sensitivity to the relationship between the human body and the cosmos. They listened to the pulse of heaven and earth, and they learned to bring the body into resonance with it, rather than against it. And from thousands of years of that accumulated wisdom, the great masters distilled a set of principles known as the Three Taboos. Sanji, three fundamental prohibitions woven into the rhythms of daily life, simple on the surface, specific in their guidance, and far deeper in their reasoning than most people ever realize. The first taboo, Ji Zhao Ju, never drink alcohol in the early morning. The second taboo, Ji Wan Cha, never drink tea late at night. The third taboo, Ji Wu Geng Se, never engage in intimacy during the fifth watch of the night, the hour between 3 and 5 in the morning. Simple, you might think. But behind each of these taboos lies an entire philosophical system, a map of the universe reflected within the human body. Today, we are going to explore each one, not as superstition, but as refined teachings on the art of living, tested and sharpened across millennia. Let us begin with the first taboo, Ji Zhao Ju, the prohibition against drinking alcohol in the early morning. In classical Chinese, Zhao means early morning, and Ju means alcohol or wine. Ji Zhao Ju means to strictly avoid consuming alcohol in the morning hours, especially before sunrise or immediately upon waking. You might think, well, that is obvious. Everyone knows drinking in the morning is bad for you. But for the ancients, the reason was not simply that alcohol damages the liver in the way modern science describes it. Their reasoning went far deeper. Rooted in the theory of Yin and Yang and the 5 elements, the two great pillars of traditional Eastern medicine. According to Yin-Yang theory, a full day and night represents one complete cycle of transformation between two opposing yet inseparable forces, Yin and Yang. The deep of night is the peak of Yin, still, inward, storing, retreating. Dawn is the moment Yang begins to rise, active, expansive, outward moving. More specifically, from around 3 in the morning to 9 in the morning, the ancients described a phase they called Shao Yang Shi, the time of Young Yang. This is yang energy in its most tender, nascent state. Like the very first ray of sunlight touching the earth, like a seedling just pushing through the soil, fragile, delicate, and in need of protection. Now picture what happens when you introduce alcohol into your body at precisely that moment. In traditional Eastern medicine, alcohol is classified as a Da-Rei-Ji Pin, a substance of extreme heat and yang energy. When consumed, it immediately disperses throughout the body, heats the meridians, and forcefully drives qi and blood outward. That sounds powerful, but here is exactly where the problem lies. In the morning, the gan qi, the energy of the gan organ, what we call the liver, is in a phase called shujie, meaning it is coordinating and regulating the flow of qi and blood throughout the entire body in preparation for the day. In the five-element system, the liver belongs to wood. And what does wood depend on to thrive? It depends on water rising from below to nourish it. That water is kidney yin, the body's essential fluids, its cooling and moistening energy. When alcohol, with its extreme heat, enters the body in the early morning, it does three things simultaneously. First, it scorches and burns away those essential fluids, drying out the very source that nourishes the liver. Second, it overstimulates liver energy beyond its natural boundaries, driving it into a state the ancients called gan yang kang, or gan huo shang chong, liver yang surging upward, liver fire blazing out of control. Third, it strikes the spleen and stomach, which are completely empty after a full night without food, disrupting their ability to process nourishment and generate qi and blood for the entire day ahead. Historical records from the Song dynasty tell of a prominent official who was famous for his habit of qi ju, drinking wine the moment he woke up each morning, believing it would warm his blood and invigorate his circulation. He lived to 60, not a bad age for that era. But his final years were marked by trembling hands, dizziness, blurred vision, and sudden, uncontrollable bursts of anger. The physicians of his time diagnosed this as gan feng nei dong, internal wind rising from an exhausted liver, directly attributed to decades of morning drinking. And here is what makes this remarkable. Modern science confirms a significant part of this picture. Drinking alcohol on an empty stomach in the early morning causes blood alcohol concentration to spike nearly 3 times faster than drinking after a meal. The liver is forced into overdrive during a state of incomplete activation. Cortisol, the stress hormone that is naturally at its highest level in the morning, combines with alcohol to create a compounded assault on the nervous system and cardiovascular function. The ancients had no word for cortisol, but they knew the outcome, and they named it in their own language. So what is the deeper lesson of Jizaoju? It is not simply advice to avoid alcohol. It is a far more profound reminder that the morning is a sacred time for nurturing newly rising yang energy. Instead of alcohol, the ancients taught to use the morning hours to breathe in the clean air of dawn, to drink warm water to gently awaken the stomach qi, and to move the body lightly through practices like Tai Chi or Qigong, allowing yang energy to circulate naturally and build its strength. That is how people lived in vibrant health without hospitals for thousands of years. Now let us move to the second taboo, Ji Wan Cha. Wan in classical Chinese means late evening or nighttime. Cha means tea. Ji Wan Cha, the prohibition against drinking tea late at night, particularly after 7 or 8 in the evening. Here, many of you will nod and think, right, the caffeine in tea keeps you awake. I already know that, and you are not wrong. But if we stop there, we miss the true depth of what the ancients understood. Because the ancients had no concept of caffeine, yet they understood precisely what tea does to the body in a different language, through a different lens. And that lens turns out to be remarkably accurate. Tea, particularly green tea and strong black tea, carries what traditional Eastern medicine describes as Han Liang properties, meaning cooling and cold in nature, and has a powerful Lin Yao effect, meaning it strongly promotes urination. These two characteristics, which may seem unremarkable on their own, become serious problems inside the body at night. Let me walk you through the 5-element system to show you why. From 5 to 7 in the evening is the hour governed by the kidney meridian, the organ that in the 5 elements belongs to water, and is considered the very root of life itself. The kidneys store what the ancients called Xian Tian Jing Qi, the primordial essence, the foundational life force a person is born with. The kidneys were the one organ the ancients said could only be replenished and protected, never deliberately depleted. From 9 to 11 at night is the hour of the Sanjiao meridian. The triple burner, the system that governs the movement and balance of all fluid throughout the body. This is the time when the body begins its process of shokang, gathering inward, storing qi, storing fluid, preparing for the deep restorative work of sleep. And from 11 at night to 1 in the morning is Zi Shi, The peak of yin energy, the most sacred window for the body to enter its deepest state of recovery and regeneration. Now, what happens when you drink strong tea at 9 or 10 at night? First, the cold nature of tea directly damages kidney yang, the warming, activating fire that lives within the water organ. When kidney yang weakens, a person begins to feel perpetually cold in the hands and feet, wakes repeatedly through the night to urinate, and develops the kind of chronic, low-grade lower back ache that never quite goes away. Second, the diuretic effect of tea stimulates the bladder, which in the 5 elements is the paired organ of the kidney, both belonging to water. Instead of storing and conserving the body's essential fluids for overnight recovery, the body is pushed into continuous excretion, steadily draining both its fluids and its kidney qi. Third, what we today call caffeine, stimulating the nervous system. The ancients described as disturbing the Shen, the spirit of the heart. When the heart spirit is agitated, the essential communication between heart and kidney, what the ancients called Shen, Xiangjiao, the harmonious dialogue between heart fire above and kidney water below, is severed. And that communication is one of the fundamental conditions required to fall into deep, truly restorative sleep. In the Eastern worldview, night is not simply the absence of light. Night is the time of yin, the time of drawing inward, of concealment, of regeneration. The setting of the sun is not the signal that the day has ended. It is an invitation for the body to transition into a different mode of being. From yang activity to yin stillness, from dispersing outward to storing within. A person who truly practiced the art of longevity would, after sundown, reduce stimulation, quiet the mind, and slow the rhythm of life. Drinking strong tea at that hour, no matter how delicious, is moving directly against the breath of heaven and earth. So is there any tea that can be drunk at night? The ancients said yes, but you must choose wisely. Teas that carry warming properties, such as aged and heavily fermented oolong, ripe pu'er, or simple preparations like ginger tea or red jujube tea. These support the spleen and stomach, do not stimulate the nervous system, and do not harm kidney yang. These can be taken lightly in the early evening. But fresh green tea, strong black tea, or any tea that is cold in nature and high in tannins, the ancients were firm. After you shi the 5 to 7 o'clock evening hour, do not touch them. And modern science, interestingly, agrees. Research on circadian biology from Harvard and other leading institutions confirms that consuming caffeine within 6 hours of sleep significantly reduces the amount of slow-wave sleep a person gets. The precise stage during which the body produces growth hormone repairs cells at the deepest level and consolidates memory. The ancients called this kidney essence restoration. Science calls it slow-wave sleep. 2 languages, 1 truth. And now, we arrive at the 3rd taboo, the one I promised you from the very beginning, the most mysterious, the most misunderstood, and in many ways the most profound of the 3 taboos. Ji Wu Gengse, Wu Geng, the 5th watch of the night, refers to the hours between 3 and 5 in the morning. See in this context does not mean color. It means seiyu, sensual desire, physical intimacy, the act between a man and a woman. Ji Wu Gengse, to strictly avoid sexual intimacy during the 5th watch of the night. I know, many of you hearing this will smile. You may think this is simply an outdated restriction from a distant and superstitious past. But stay with me just a little longer, because when you understand the philosophical architecture behind this taboo, that smile will fade. What you will feel instead is something closer to awe. The ancients divided the night into 5 watches, each lasting 2 hours. The first watch, 7 to 9 in the evening, Huanghun, the twilight when darkness first falls. The second watch, 9 to 11 at night, Rending, when all people have settled into sleep. The third watch, 11 at night to 1 in the morning, Zixi, the absolute peak of yin, the deepest point of the night. The fourth watch, 1 to 3 in the morning, Chouxi, when yang energy begins its first faint stirring. The fifth watch, 3 to 5 in the morning, Yinxi. And this is where everything becomes extraordinary. The fifth watch, the hour of yin, is, within the system of 5 elements and meridian theory, one of the most remarkable windows of time in the entire 24-hour cycle. It is the moment when 2 major cosmic events occur simultaneously within the human body. The first event, the yang energy of heaven and earth, after spending an entire night gathered deep beneath the surface, begins its first tentative emergence. But it is not yet strong. It is like a flame just kindled from a single spark, vulnerable enough that the smallest gust of wind could extinguish it entirely. The second event, the lung meridian reaches the absolute peak of its daily activity during this hour, distributing zong qi, the refined respiratory energy, throughout all 12 meridians of the body, preparing every system for the coming day. In other words, the fifth watch is the moment when the body is carrying out the single greatest handover of the entire day, transitioning from the mode of rest and recovery into the mode of readiness and activity. Imagine a vast factory in the process of starting up all its machinery at once, ramping slowly from zero output toward full capacity. And the ancients asked, what happens if, right in the middle of that startup sequence, you suddenly demand the factory run at maximum power? The answer, when it comes to the human body, is damage that accumulates quietly, step by step. Let us walk through this carefully. In traditional Eastern medicine, sexual intimacy is considered the single greatest consumer of yuan qi, original energy, among all ordinary daily activities. Specifically, it draws simultaneously on three vital reserves. The first is kidney Xing, the essence stored deep within the kidneys, the foundational substance from which vitality and longevity are drawn. The second is Shen, the spirit energy governed by the heart. The third is gan shui, the blood regulated and stored by the liver. During the fifth watch, yang energy exists in a state the ancients called Xiao Yang, young yang, newborn yang. The I Ching, the ancient book of changes, contains a hexagram called Di Lei Fu, return, that captures this state precisely. It depicts a single unbroken yang line resting beneath 5 broken yin lines. Yang is present as nothing more than a single thread of light, surrounded on all sides by the vast ocean of yin that has held the night. When intimacy occurs at this moment, the kidney essence and yang energy that have been carefully accumulated through the entire night of sleep are drawn out and dispersed completely. At the exact moment they are most fragile. At the exact moment they most need to be protected. The immediate consequence is what the ancients called yang shu, yang deficiency. The most visible sign of this, the very same morning, is profound exhaustion from the moment of waking. A heaviness in the limbs, an unusual sensitivity to cold, mental fog that will not lift, and shallow, shortened breathing throughout the day. The long-term consequence, when this becomes a pattern, is chronic kidney yang deficiency. In traditional Eastern medicine, this is considered one of the most serious foundational imbalances a person can develop. It is associated with premature aging, declining reproductive capacity, chronic lower back pain, progressive memory loss, and a significantly shortened lifespan. But the damage does not stop there. Traditional Eastern medicine views the body as an ecosystem, every organ linked to every other through the laws of generation and control within the 5 elements. The hour of yin is the hour of the gan organ, the liver, belonging to wood in the 5 elements, which is completing its overnight cycle and preparing to hand off its function to the day. In the law of generation, shui sheng mu, water generates wood. Kidney water nourishes liver wood. The kidney is the mother of the liver. When kidney essence is depleted, the liver has no source from which to draw nourishment. 3 consequences follow. Gan qi stagnation, felt as irritability without clear cause, a constant low-level frustration, tightness in the chest, and the habit of sighing deeply without knowing why. Gan shui deficiency, expressed as blurred vision, weakening of the tendons and ligaments throughout the body, and persistent numbness or tingling in the hands and feet. And in serious, long-standing cases, gan feng nei dong, internal liver wind rising, manifesting as trembling in the hands, chronic dizziness, and recurring headaches that no amount of rest seems to resolve. And we must not forget the lungs, which are running at their absolute peak during the 5th watch. When the body engages in intense physical activity and sudden energy expenditure during this hour, the natural rhythm of the breath is violently disrupted, and lung qi is scattered in all directions. The ancients held this responsible for the pattern they observed in those who regularly violated this taboo, a persistent vulnerability to respiratory illness, chronic cough, and a condition called daohan, night sweating. In traditional Eastern medicine, night sweating is a hallmark sign of yin shu, yin deficiency with internal heat, meaning the cooling, nourishing, restorative yin of the body has been so depleted that the body generates pathological heat even in sleep. The ancients were not ascetics raging against human nature. They developed an entire field of knowledge called Fangzhong Shu, the art of the chamber, which addressed the intimate life of human beings with complete openness, deep practicality, and remarkable sophistication. The Taoist tradition carried a saying, Yi Fang Shi, Bai Ri Shi Jing. One act of intimacy consumes the essence of 100 days. This is deliberate exaggeration, used to underscore how precious kidney essence truly is. But the message is unmistakable. This is a finite and irreplaceable resource, and it must be used with both timing and restraint. The Sunu Jing, the classic of the plain girl, one of the oldest surviving texts on the arts of health and intimacy, states clearly, there are auspicious hours and inauspicious hours for such matters. The most auspicious is when yang energy is already established and yin has not yet withdrawn. This points to the early part of the night, roughly 9 to 11 in the evening, when both yin and yang are in natural balance and the body still holds the fullness of the day's energy. And the most inauspicious hour, Wu Gang Tian Ming, the fifth watch, as dawn approaches. This warning does not appear once or twice. It appears across dozens of medical and longevity texts over thousands of years. Generation after generation of healers observed the same outcome and recorded the same conclusion. And here is what makes all of this genuinely remarkable to me. Modern research in chronobiology, the science of the body's internal clock, has independently discovered several striking facts about the window between 3 and 5 in the morning. This is the period when cortisol levels begin their steep climb, the body's internal signal preparing for the demands of the coming day. Blood pressure is at its lowest point in the full 24-hour cycle. Core body temperature has dropped to its minimum. The parasympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for rest, recovery, and repair, is operating at its highest level of activity. In other words, between 3 and 5 in the morning, the body is simultaneously at its most physiologically vulnerable and in the middle of its most critical restorative work. Any high-intensity physical activity during this window, including sexual activity, abruptly interrupts the cortisol preparation cycle, disrupts circadian rhythm, and prevents the immune system from completing its overnight regeneration sequence. The ancients had no cortisol monitors, no blood pressure cuffs, no sleep labs, but they had thousands of years of careful observation, and they knew, do not do anything strenuous during the fifth watch. Having walked through all 3 taboos, Ji Zhao Ju, Ji Wan Cha, and Ji Wu Gang Se, we can see clearly that these are not 3 separate, unrelated rules. They are 3 expressions of a single unified philosophy. That philosophy is Shun Tian Shi, live in accordance with the timing of heaven. The ancients perceived the universe as a living being, its breath, its pulse, its cycles of sleeping and waking, expressed through the ceaseless transformation of yin and yang across every hour, every season, every year. And the human body was not separate from that living being. It was a reflection of it. The ancients called this Shao Tian Di, the small heaven and earth, a cosmos in miniature, living inside every one of us. Each of the 3 taboos speaks to the violation of a natural rhythm. Ji Zhao Ju, do not assault the fragile, newly rising yang energy of morning with the explosive heat of alcohol. Ji Wan Cha, do not agitate the heart, spirit, and kidney qi when the night is calling you inward to store and restore. Ji Wu Gang Se, do not scatter your most precious reserves of kidney essence and yang energy at the exact moment heaven and earth are in transition, when your body is at its most vulnerable and performing its most sacred work. There is a common misunderstanding about ancient Eastern longevity practices, that they represent a life of rigid austerity, of denial, of giving up all pleasure. That is entirely wrong. The Huangdi Neijing never says, do not drink alcohol. It says drink at the right time. It never says do not drink tea. It says drink the right kind at the right hour. It never says do not be intimate with your partner. It says move in harmony with the natural rhythm of your body and the world around you. Yang Sheng is the art of harmony, not the art of deprivation. It teaches you to live more fully, because when you move with nature rather than against it, you carry more energy, you think with greater clarity, you sleep more deeply, and you live long enough to truly enjoy the life you have been given. A great master of longevity from the Tang dynasty once said, "The person who understands Yang Sheng is not the person who refuses to eat, refuses to drink, refuses to feel joy. It is the person who eats rightly, drinks rightly, and embraces joy at the right moment, like water that finds the low ground and flows without forcing, without rushing, without waste." We live today in a world where the natural rhythms of life have been almost completely overturned. Electric light has dissolved the boundary between day and night. Coffee and energy drinks hold us artificially awake during the hours our bodies are asking for rest. Social media pulls the mind into a state of relentless stimulation, even as we lie in bed at midnight. And the result? We have everything the ancients never had. Technology, medicine, food abundance beyond imagination. Yet we are struggling with conditions they rarely encountered: chronic insomnia, exhaustion without a clear cause, anxiety that never fully lifts, an immune system that never quite catches up. Perhaps, and I offer this gently, the answer is not only in better medication or more advanced diagnostic technology. Perhaps part of the answer lies in what the ancients understood long ago, that the human body has a rhythm. And when we honor that rhythm rather than override it, the body repays us in ways that no prescription can replicate. The three taboos are not relics of a civilization that has passed. They are letters written across 1,000 years, addressed to us, here, today, reminding us that the human body is not a machine designed to operate at full power around the clock without regard for its inner tides. Drink alcohol in the early morning, and you are stealing from the fragile yang energy that has only just begun to rise. Drink strong tea deep into the night, and you are blocking the kidney qi from the rest it needs to renew itself. Be intimate during the fifth watch, and you are depleting the most precious reserves your body holds, at the exact moment they are weakest and most needed. The ancients said, "Sheng Gong Ji Wei Bing." The greatest physician is not the one who cures disease, but the one who prevents it from arising at all. And where does that begin? It begins with the smallest things, with knowing when to drink and when to refrain, when to be awake and when to surrender to sleep, when the body needs to move and when it needs to be still. That is the wisdom of the three taboos. That is the inheritance of thousands of years of Eastern longevity practice. Thank you for walking this path with us today. If what you heard resonated with you, share it with someone you care about, because wisdom only lives when it moves. This is Wisdom of the Ancients, where the lessons of 1,000 years meet the world of today. Live in harmony with heaven and earth, and live long.